Hey guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video I'll be doing a player comparison between two guys that are actually currently in my AFL Fantasy Classic setup at the moment in the midfield, in Jack Steele and Luke Davies-Uniacke. These two, I believe, are next to each other in the midfield pricing at 884k for Steele and 879k for LDU. And I think these two they do actually have value, and I think it's something that I'm trying to bring into some of my videos now is the different types of value. I think there's a clear three different types of value, or at least two different types of value. One of them is the historical value. I mean, we've seen with Steele, it's not necessarily an injured value that he's got, which is another type. Steele has gone 120, I believe, in the past, and also had 110 seasons before. If we look at it, 122 basically in 2021, 110 in 2022, and then also in 2020, he had a 90 in the COVID year, which equates to, I believe, a 110 from memory through all the other videos that we've had him in. A 113 in 2020 if you round it up. And so he has what I like to call historical value. LDU I think has a little bit of both the other two forms of injury value alongside. I believe, does LDU have injury value? Not to the extent. No, doesn't really actually look like it, to be honest. That he has actual injury value. That would be more last year's. With that 14, etc. Injury value is something that I more put on the likes of a Zach Williams, etc., who's got basically a clean slate and discounted because of that. LDU more has the upside value, which is probably the hardest value to pick, and that's why if you almost view that Grundy and Wardlaw have the same upside, I would rather go with Grundy because he's got historical value and a role change value, rather than Wardlaw, whose perceived value is 25 upside or whatever, and Grundy's 25 as well. You can sort of see where I'm heading at there, is that it's a lot harder to hit the natural improvement rather than the injury or historical upside in value. So before we get into this video, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you know when I upload, and let's get into this video. So as you can see here, I've got LDU over here. Let me actually move my webcam back across. There we go. So LDU, you can see here, last year averaged 97.4. The year before that averaged 93.1, but had that injury game, so went at 97. And then the year before that, 81, 56. So you can sort of see this natural progression here. And he did have, as you see here, a little bit of injury upside in the 93 to 97 that he sort of showed there as well. And I think this is one where he could be a much more just, I would say it's sort of a breakout, but it obviously isn't a breakout. I would say it's more of a assertion up to the big top 10s for LDU, as he has had big games. A 138 max last year with 7 tons and 4 120s in 14 games. So I think he's really shown that he can take it to if you look here, actually he's had the same amount of 120s in 2/3 of the games. So I think it's shown that he can do it. And I think he actually has a better conversion rate, 1 in 2, oh no, actually a worse conversion rate now looking at that, 1 in 2 for 100 games, and just over half the games last year in 2022 with tons. So that's an interesting one to look at. But I think LDU, we can see this last stretch here, he really started to put it together. And I know we're looking at a 6-game stretch again, but he did go 112 to end the season. So he's found something in his game. And I think it was almost here, you can sort of see it actually. It's not necessary. Yes, he did get the disposals to go with it, but something you see here with when he goes large, he really does get the 8 that we're talking about, the 8 non-disposal. I mean, he has a 1 and 5 there, but the other tons he had, they were huge, and a 2 and 4, 2 and 5, etc. But he generally gets at least 6 or 7 marks and tackles at least in a game. So it shows he isn't the most disposal dependent. for midfielders, so he can rack it up without, and you can see the tons in the early season as well, 4 and 5, 4 and 5, 7 and 5, and this is back in 2022 actually, now looking at it, but when he did it in 2022, you can see the big numbers as well, so he can rack it up in terms of non-disposal points, and that's something that I think he can really improve in 2024. Now with Wardlaw doing a lot of the dirty work inside, I hope he can get a little bit on the outside and just get that sort of cheapish ball and get those sort of five marks a game, 4 marks a game, where what did he get last year? 3.7 marks, 4.5 tackles. If he can get his marks back up to 5 and his tackles back up to the 4.5 as well, you'll see a plus 1.2 there, as well as that's already three and a bit points of upside. And then you've got, and all he has to do is hit 105, 110. So all we're looking for is 8 to 10 points of upside, and that could easily just come in the kicks and the handballs, obviously. We see his time on ground. Hopefully that can improve by 3 or 4%. All we're talking about with LDU is about 3 or 4% improvement across the board, and then that starts to add up, or just hitting career highs across a lot of these numbers. I mean, the marks will do it, as well as the time on ground if he gets that. CBAs are high, so I think he's one that a lot of the comp at the moment, just because of the early buy rounds, are a little bit just sort of, you can take a risk on him a little bit, and if he isn't going to go well, then you can just flip him to another premium in round 6, 7, 8 or whatever, when he starts to really just show that he isn't top 10 material. But I think he is one that can take that breakout to that top 10 just by I think he is going to be one that, with this new midfield mix for North Melbourne, you've got Wardlaw, him, and then if we actually look at the CBAs for North Melbourne here quickly, let's put this over here, and then we go here, and then CBAs, you'll see that it is a very, they're sort of mix and matching at the moment. Will Phillips, I don't know if he's necessarily best 22 necessarily. You got Taron Thomas, who looks to be out. Cunnington retired, obviously. Jai Simpkin looks to have a forward role this year. Then you got George Wardlaw, should be 65%, I would expect. Hugh Greenwood, don't even know if he makes best 22, to be honest with you. Tom Powell, I think, gets more of a midfield role. Shields, don't know. And then I think Lazaro as well takes up a little bit of the midfield. But it's just sort of a mix and match, and you can see how many guys ran through their midfield. That is a lot of guys that ran through. What's that? Almost 20 names probably. That ran through their midfield. Even Jaden Stevenson got a run through there, just to show you how many people ran through there. So I think this is one that's going to be very, very a watch and wait for the midfield for North Melbourne, but I think a stalwart in there will be LDU, and I think he's really going to have to step it up, and that could easily become a 30 disposal 4 and 4 or 5 and 5 guy, and that'll be well enough to get him up towards those big numbers. I mean, that's 2.5 kicks, the handballs can stay the same, and then it's basically another 2.5 touches, another mark and a half a tackle a game, which is 2, 4, probably another 6 or 7 points. So what's that? You got 12 points probably up there in itself, and that's what we need basically from him. So if he can become a 35 and 5 guy, that is exactly what we need out of LDU. And at 884, I don't see there being much downside with him, to be honest with you. At worst, he's probably a 97, 98 guy. But we can see he can go on a run where he can go 6 weeks with basically tons every single week. It's just these games where he has like a 69% time on ground, 67, 75, etc. that are really, really poor. You can see here, basically when he goes above, like there's one game here, it seems like when he goes above about 70% time on ground where he actually doesn't score. And back to 2022 when that was the case as well. So I think it's just him just needing to get his time on ground to a consistent 80% that he'll score. But anyway, might want to move across to the Jack Steele. And I think this one is sort of a one that isn't as risky, obviously, as LDU. But LDU isn't that risky as well, just because he's got one less game to sort of worry about. And as premiums, if you actually look at the premium mix for the midfield, if we go at these sort of 900k plus guys, you got the big dogs in Bontempelli. Oliver's got a an extra game, a bye to worry about in the first 7 or 8. Dawson, Merritt, Taranto, but all these guys don't really have value. Taranto, Gordon, Green, Dacos, Petrarca, and then a lot of these guys have that bye that is really going to make them sort of hard to catch up. They almost need to go about 120 for a guy to go 100. For an LDU to go like 110, it means that guys that have the bye have to go about 125 or something like that to catch up the points. So it would be really tough for that to actually happen. And then when you get down to this 800 to 900k range, you got Kelly, Neal, Chera, Miller. Day's out anyway. Josh Dacos has the bye. Warner has the bye. Rowell. Setterfield doesn't look... well, he should be back, but I don't think he's a 100 scorer anyway. McRae's injury anyway, but he's a forward. Mitchell bye. Wood, don't think he's too good. Or at least a consistent enough scorer. Then you got Parker bye. Daniel has that game in round 2 in the country, I believe, so he won't score well there, it seems. Sheed seems a perennial like 90 type guy. And then you got McCluggage also on the bye as well. So you sort of see those 800k ranges, and there's not really anyone that looks that is really gonna catch you out, I don't think, as there's a lot of buy guys in there, as well as the low 900s. There's a lot of buy guys in there, so I don't think those guys are going to catch out these guys too much. So you're not going to lose too much going for LDU, I don't think. And I think anyway, he's the best of the guys in the 800k range to take a punt on, as he has the sort of fantasy scoring makeup comparative to like a Rowell, who just is sort of a handball and tackle guy, and some of the other guys like a Setterfield hasn't really ever shown it. And anyone else? Who did I forget? Tim Kelly seems like just a 100 guy. And then you've got a lot of guys. Yeah, so even Setterfield we talked about. And then Wood is a winger. So there's no one really in that 800k midfield that I really like the look of anyway. So you got Steele, and he's just down 12 points, 22 points basically down on his 2021. And I think Jaden put out some good stuff about him. Is basically, it seems like he's dropped off. I believe it was his stoppage scoring, and I think that's partially just down to him just having injury after injury. I think there might have been is there any injury adjusted games or whatever for him? He had a 75 as well here, so you take that out and whatever he gets to. As well as you just see he just had some 70 time on ground games, whereas back at his best in 2021 you see a lot of 80% time on ground, 80 across the board. So I think he's had a full preseason from memory, and I think that's just going to help him hopefully to get over all these nagging injuries that he's had across the last sort of year and a half to 2 years. And then that'll help him to, I guess, just stay out in the park. Because if you see that time on ground improves, that is just natural improvement, as well as you can see his marks fell away, as well as his just disposals in the end as well. So I think if he can just stay out on the park, he will generally have a 7, 8, 10% improvement here and get towards that. I think he could be a 110 guy yet again if he gets back to his best and is just on the park. So I think there is that amount of upside in him, historical upside, rather than the hopeful upside of natural improvement in LDU that we were talking about earlier. So yeah, I think Steele is the one that I think a lot of people will jump on, will hold early here. 14%, I think that will probably jump up to around 20% by first bounce of round 1, and I think you will see LDU around that 16, 17% as a lot of people start to figure out, or at least start to figure out when they have the, when you start to realize that you need more on the bench than just 200k guys, you're going to need probably, I would say, a spare 500, 400,000 from those 200k guys to cover all your bench options. I mean that in the sense of, I think that's about 120, 200, 230, 350, 430 there around I think, and I have roughly 125k spare at the moment to make some maneuvers after round 0. So I roughly have about 550 unspent from a 200k bench to So yeah, I think that's what a lot of people will figure out, and then they'll start going down from like a Rosie or any of those million guys and start phasing down to those 890k guys, and that's where I think you will see LDU and Steele become higher ownership, which also helps in what we were discussing a couple of days ago with the pods, Team Vanilla versus pods, in that when they start, obviously those two were 14 and 13% owned, so they're safe-ish picks anyway, but you start to get that up towards 20%, and then the risk starts to lessen quite a lot in if they do fail, because a lot of the players will have them in general, so that'll help, I think, a lot as well. And if they do pop off, then they'll go to 40% ownership in a week or two. So you do gain maybe, on average, 50 points on the comp, something like that, but not too much. But if they fail, you maybe lose 20 points to some of the comp, 40 points to some of the comp. It's not too bad. Whereas if they were like a Giant Newcomb ownership at the moment, who I believe, what is he at? 5.67, Nick Martin, 3.73. I don't know what exactly they were when I was doing the videos on them, but I believe they're starting to rise a little bit, like I said, and hopefully they get towards that 10%, because if they get that 10% range, I'm starting to feel happy about them. But I think Steele, just like I said, he has a huge ceiling. We've seen him go 124 back in 2017, 145, 132, 111, 162 in 2021. And that 111, like that 111 equates to roughly, if I do it, that equates to a 138. So he's gone 124, 145, 132, 138, 162, 154, and 146. So he's had a massive ceiling across the years. It's just whether he can get that floor up, and that floor, if it's back to that sort of 80 floor, then I think you'll see him absolutely do really well. His first 6 games, if I just wanted to do this quickly, just to show you: Geelong, Collingwood, Essendon. If we go here, yes, it does show the opponent average. Geelong, Collingwood, Essendon. Geelong are one of his worst sides at 90. Collingwood are up there for him at 97. What does it say for them? It says 100, so maybe he played them in the final or something. And then you got Essendon as well, who are the middle of the pack, are they? Where are they here? I saw them. I've totally missed them. Here they are. He averages 92, and then you get down to the likes of a Richmond, Giants, and also Western Bulldogs. And if we quickly go here, Richmond are, where are they? Here they are. Giants are down there as well, and then you've got Western Bulldogs. So he does have some of his tougher games, but they're not really too tough, to be honest with you. He still averages 90 consistently against them all, and that even probably factors in a couple of his rookie years where he really didn't do too much. But anyway, that pretty much is the video, and just showing that I think both of these guys are good options. I wouldn't really, I much prefer, I think, and this will, I think, factor in when we see the ownerships come round, the tip-off for round 1, is that I think Jack Steele will be 1 or 2% higher owned, and that is just because historical value is a little bit easier to, I guess, to equate or whatever, or to fall back on than someone stepping it up a gear and natural improvement or progression. I think, so that's why I think Jack Steele, with a 120 banker a couple of years ago and a couple 110s, I think is a lot easier to, or a lot more comfortable to go with him, knowing that he has that historical backing and value, rather than going with your own almost gut or hopefulness, I guess, or potential or bias or something. I think that's why it's a lesser, why it's not as useful. It is still useful to have progression in mind for guys like LDU and stuff like that, but it's a lot harder to get the exact pinpoint on what they'll do. So that's why I think Steele is probably going to end up 21%, and LDU probably around that 19 or so % owned when we get to the round 1. But anyway, that is the player comparison of both of those guys, and sort of what I value, what I think value is, and how I sort of split it up a little bit. And that's why you'll see me across the season want guys that have, or in the preseason I've wanted guys that have had sort of historical value. That's why I value Grundy a lot higher than some guys like the 3rd-year breakout guys. So that's my take on that, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.